Hello, AP Psychology students, and welcome to Chapter 10 on behavior in the social and cultural context. Fun stuff. So let's get into this a little bit. We've got a little bit of a long section here. Big thing to understand here. We're talking about social psychology or cultural psychology, and so how individuals behave in groups, not the study of groups, which is sociology, or the study of cultures, which is anthropology. So we're looking at how group settings, either in a social group or a cultural group, affects our own behavior and our mindsets and our attitudes. So we have a picture from my 8th grade going into 9th grade summer where we, as a baseball team, all shaved our heads. And so kind of keep this picture in mind because groups do things that maybe you don't really want to do. People will do things within groups. And there were many of the people in this picture that did not want to shave their heads. They didn't want to do it, but, they were kind of pressured and it was kind of the thing to do. In fact, I think all but two of us they went back to long hair. I stayed with the short hair the rest of my life. So roles and rules. Social psychology is the study of how social roles, attitudes, relationships, and groups influence people to do things they normally wouldn't do on their own. So being part of a group that makes you kind of changes your own perspective. Being a part of the crowd, being in the in a big large gathering affects our behavior. Cultural psychology is a study of the broader influence of culture and ethnicity on roles and relationships in society. And we'll get more specific into a lot of these. And so the idea of roles and all that, we have the picture from Mean Girls here, which there's definite roles in that movie of what's everything that's going on. So let's talk about norms. And so this is really kind of where social psychology is a lot of fun. There are rules of how we're supposed to act. And we don't really know about them until we see them broken. And they're usually unwritten. A lot of times they're unspoken. They include like conversational distance, how we speak with our hands, how we behave in certain functions. Like if your daughter's going to prom, you take a picture next to her with your shirt off and your Daisy Dukes. Is that normal? Yeah, it's up to you. So conventions for everyday life that make interactions orderly and predictable. So we know how to greet each other. We know how to say goodbye. And it basically maps out socially how we should act from everything from birth all the way to death. Because there's a way that we should act when not when you were born as a baby, you're supposed to cry, but mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, and there's all these roles and norms set out to first birthdays, to going to school. How's your first day of school supposed to look like? To weddings, and then eventually to funerals and things like that. And so there's norms for just about every human experience. And is determined by society on what is normal, and they're always rapidly changing. Conversation distance is a really good one because we have this little bubble, and some cultures get a lot closer, but now because of COVID, we kind of keep our distance a little more, and we're losing the body language and the facial language of facial recognition because of all the masks. So roles are a given social position that is governed by the set norms for proper behavior. And so you have a role. It can be based on your job, your group, your family. If you're a student, your relationship, your boyfriend, girlfriend. Like if you have a group of friends, you usually have a leader, and then you have a second in command, and you have a goofball that always does crazy things, and you have someone who's always kind of lost and doesn't know what's going on. You have someone that everyone picks on, and then there's someone that everyone secretly hates. And basically, when they find out that you don't like the same person, you get joy out of talking trash about them. And if you're confused, going, wait, there's no one in my group that we hate. You're the guy. You're the gal. Sorry, they hate you. I'm just kidding. So your roles are based on these things, and they used to do polls and they ask American men and women, "Who are you?" Besides your name, I'm Paul. They would say, "Who are you?" And it was more likely for men to respond with their job. I'm a teacher. I'm a lawyer. I'm a mechanic. And women were more likely to respond with, "I'm a wife. I'm a mother." And those are rapidly changing. Those norms are changing throughout society. And so people bring their own personalities and interests to the roles. And so, really, if you want to look at how roles are broken or norms are broken and roles are kind of different, look at children. These are 10 little social norms that kids break all the time. One, eating food off the floor and everything with their hands. I mean, it's just okay. This is, forks don't work. Put it in your mouth. Dressing in crazy clothes. They don't have to match. You can have purple shorts and a blue shirt and a red hat. It's cool. Green shoes. Yeah, Frankenstein. Talking about people that aren't there. Like, hey, there's a bad guy over there, mommy. That guy's smoking. You know, they say the only truly honest people in this world are really angry people, drunks, and children. And then, what else doesn't lie? Yoga pants. Taking their clothes off anywhere and everywhere. We're talking little kids, okay? Picking their nose and putting their hands down their pants. Sadly, we have a lot of adults who do this still. A general lack of manners, chewing with your mouth open and putting your elbow on the table and all that stuff. Crying, yelling, acting like a drunk person in public. Drunks and toddlers have a lot in common. I was standing here. I want my drinky. Where's my bottle? Maybe they're not toilet trained. That's kind of a Jim Gaffigan joke there. Good job, Jim Gaffigan. Attaching themselves to strangers' legs. I've had little kids grab my legs and look up, and then they get freaked out like, oh, you're not daddy. Paying no attention to where they're going, which a lot of adults do this as well. Some of them drive, which is really scary. And then using the world as their bathroom. You can just go wherever. So that's kind of, when you see a kid do something, you go, oh yeah, they don't know the rules yet. They don't understand. Some other things, bro hugs. How guys hug and greet each other versus how girls hug. Tipping is a good example. In many cultures, it's an insult to tip. It means you don't make enough money, so I feel bad for you. Whereas in our culture, we mandate it. We don't pay them enough. Family affection, kissing children. Is that okay? Hugging and kissing children. Some families are very affectionate. Some ethnicities, like Italians and some Latino families, are very affectionate. Others are very cold. Very non-loving, not non-loving, excuse me, non-affectionate. Latino cultures, these are some cultural norms here. They're much more likely to have nicknames that are very rude and kind of mean to Anglo cultures, like, hey, viva el gordo, like, hey, you're fat. We wouldn't say that. Hey, ugly, come here. Feo, panaki. You're not a true Canadian unless you apologize for saying sorry too much. And then in our culture here in America, kids are starving in Africa. You won't even finish your food. So making me fat will somehow change that. So then in America also, we have this thing that we're always okay with violence. Not always, but violence is kind of a part of our culture. Since the Pilgrims have landed, violence has been kind of a thing. But because the Pilgrims and the Puritans helped found our country, sex and nudity is not, though. During the 1950s, I mean, this has gone on to the 20th and 21st centuries. During the 50s, there was about 30 different TV shows that were Westerns, meaning shoot 'em up, punching, fighting, cowboys and Indians. But then in an episode of I Have Loved Lucy, they weren't allowed to say the word pregnant because that meant she might have sex. So they had to use like a French term, enceinte. And so it's just really weird that in our culture, we're very open to violence, but not things with sexuality. Whereas in Europe, they're a little more open to that. In fact, the bottom right picture here is Fred and Wilma Flintstone, who was the first American couple ever shown in bed together on television, on network TV. Is there something wrong with this? I mean, is this guy violating cultural norms? I mean, he's vacuuming his lawn, he didn't have a shirt on, he is drinking a 40 ounce of Mickey's, he's got a tattoo, he's got his hat backwards. So some generations are like, whoa, why is he drinking during the day? Why does he have tattoos? Why is his shirt off? There's a lot of things going on. I'm sure you ladies are liking the eye candy right now. So you pause it if you like. So let's get to the two most notorious studies in psychology. Stanley Milgram wanted to see how well people obey. Wanted to see, if people will follow the rules. And so how would people obey an authority figure when directly ordered to violate their own ethical standards? So he had this design where people were called teachers and they had to sit there and in another room they would answer questions right or wrong. If they got wrong, they had to push a button that would shock them. And so the actors in the other room pretended to be electrocuted. And then there was a person there that was conducting it, and they very plainly just said, the experiment must go on, or we must continue. It wasn't forceful, just to see if there was an authority figure, how well people obeyed. And this possibly was inspired by the Eichmann trial. Adolf Eichmann was a runaway Nazi caught in Argentina, I believe in '61. And he was put on war crimes for his role in the Holocaust. And his defense was, I was following orders. And the courts threw that out and said, no, you should have done something better. You can't just follow orders. And Milgram, not being a Nazi sympathizer, just wanted to show that, hey, you know what? People do obey. We like to think that humans are very rebellious and we don't like to be told what to do. We don't like it, but we still follow the rules. And so he set this up where the teachers had to administer shocks for wrong answers that increased every time. Every time they got one wrong, the voltage went up. People obey shockingly well. Yeah, I wrote it. Terrible pun. 2/3 of the people gave the maximum shock. They went all the way and they said, I don't want to do it. And they said, the experiment must go on. They're like, oh, okay. And the person in the other room screaming. And this is unethical because, yeah, the person wasn't being electrocuted, but the person that, was pushing the button, they thought they were hurting someone. So they was causing psychological harm. And so every single participant in the original Milgram study actually gave a shock up to 300 volts, which is deadly. That's enough to kill someone. Scary. The experiment has actually been redone 3,000 times, even though it's notorious and it's unethical. They call it the Yesterday of experiments. Yesterday is the most covered song in rock and roll history by the Beatles. And so they found that obedience was more of a function of the situation than a person's personality. They've done all these tests to see that all the big five personality types, going both ways, they obey really, really well. And so this was, kind of changed perspectives on things. And like I said, it was partially inspired by the Eichmann trial. And this was the most notorious psychology experiment until Stanford Prison came around. And Dr. Philip Zimbardo and Dr. Craig Henning of Stanford University decided to do a little experiment where they just wanted to see the power of a role. Whereas Milgram did rules and obedience, we're gonna give you a role and see how you behave. They hired students. They could sign up for $15 a day for this experiment. They made them take a psychology test ahead of time to see that they were normal or stable, and they chose the 24 most stable people. They basically flipped a coin and picked half were guards, half were prisoners. The prisoners, they actually even arrested. They booked them, they fingerprinted them, and then they bagged them and took them into their prison, which was in the basement of a Stanford University psychology building. The guards were given handcuffs, whistles, glasses, and a baton and a plain uniform. And they were told, just simulate this. See what happens. Play your role. And so this is what happened there. And they're supposed to actually do this for 2 weeks. And the first night it didn't go well. They were kind of joking around like, this is stupid. At least we're getting paid $15 a day. But then the second night, there's a guy named Dave Esselman. He decided, you know what? I'm going to be the biggest, baddest guy I can. I'm going to see what I can get away with as a guard. Because in his mind, he said, I'm not the one in charge. If I do something wrong, the professors will stop me. They're the wardens, as he would say. And so he just kept doing things. And then Zimbardo and Haney, they were like, this is really fascinating. They never stepped in and stopped it. In fact, 1/3 of the guards were harsh and abusive. Because of that abuse, I believe on the second or third night, one of the prisoners had a nervous breakdown. And then they started doing very cruel, awful things, very sexual things. And then every night until it was finished, another prisoner had a nervous, emotional breakdown and left the study. And so it ended after 6 days. And it's notorious. There's video of it. I'm not going to show it on this because it is very, very, it's graphic. It compares it to the Abu Ghraib prison scandal in Iraq in 2003. And the language is very, very colorful. But if you want to look it up, by all means, if you're really into psychology, look up the Stanford Prison video. The study, though very unethical, showed the power of roles and the power of suggestion. Zimbardo empowered them by saying to the guards, we'll have all the power. And that was kind of the license to do what they wanted. It took his girlfriend to show up because she wasn't in it. They were caught up in it and they were fascinated by it. And she said, this is wrong. And they had a big fight and Zimbardo was mad. And then finally he went, yeah, you're right. And he shut the thing down. And so social situation affects behavior. Roles do. And also wearing a mask. The glasses acted as a mask. And so the power of a situation can overcome our personality traits. Most of you have probably been in an athletic game and you've screamed at the refs, you're terrible, you're killing us, oh, why are you even here? Would you ever do that at the bank? Would you do that at church? Would you do that to your pastor? Like, I can't believe you picked that verse, you're terrible. What are you doing? You're ruining the Bible. It wouldn't happen. This social situation does that. So like I said, look up the Stanford Prison. So why do people obey? Why? Compliance with rules has a lot of benefits. Our whole basis of civilization is based on following rules. Without rules, civilization goes away. Obedience can have darker aspects, and that gets where it's very scary. People can be manipulated. We have the rise of cults, which we're going to talk about later in this chapter. People obey if they're deeply convinced of the authority's legitimacy. And so I have a picture here. Norton, the first emperor of the United States, and protector of Mexico. There was this crazy homeless guy in San Francisco who lived till 1880 who declared himself the Emperor of the United States. And they went along with it. They threw him a parade. They kind of had fun with it. But he wasn't really the emperor. He didn't have the authority to invade Panama or whatever. But they kind of obliged him. And actually, the citizens of San Francisco liked it. It was funny to them. They erected this headstone for him. Normative social influence is we comply to fill our need to be liked or to belong. This is one of the most powerful things is we want to be a part of the crowd. We want to be liked. We want to feel like we're a part of the group. This is why that group in the very first picture, that a lot of those boys that are my teammates shaved their heads. They wanted to be liked. They want to be a part of the group. They want to be a part of something. So also some other things. We allocate responsibility to the authority. That's Zimbardo, by the way, who looks like the devil, and he has a picture of himself as the devil with Darth Vader. This is really trippy here. And remember, Dave Eshelman, the guard in the Stanford prison, said, "I'm not the one in charge. It's the professors. It's them." Eichmann said, "I was just following orders, routining the task. Sometimes you do things that are just, you go through the motions and you just kind of do it every single day." The death records, I mean, they know the exact number of the Holocaust because the Nazis took meticulous records. And there was people filling out every day, all these people that were slaughtered by the Nazis. Tragically, awfully, just ending families. But it became routine. It was their job. They just filling in, spreadsheets or whatever. It's not a big deal. Wanting to be polite. We do this a lot. You don't tell your friend you got spinach in your teeth. We just kind of go, or maybe we do the kind of, but we don't want to be rude. We don't say things that we really mean. Good manners protect people's feelings. They make relationship and civilization possible. So we don't say things unless we're like old, angry, drunk, or kids, right? Old people say what they want to. Becoming entrapped. You escalate your commitment. Like, I've already done this. I might as well go a little bit further. I've already put in all this time. What's just a little bit more? Little small increments of increase of why we obey and do things is sometimes we don't realize that we're putting up with a lot. So small incremental increases do not seem like a big deal. This happens a lot in relationships. Like, we've been on 3 dates. I guess we can have a kiss. I don't really like him. We've been on 5 or 6 dates, so maybe we'll fool around a little bit. Well, we've been together for a few months. Why don't we move in together? 2 years later, I don't know why I'm with you. I don't even like you. But it's just kind of small, incremental. The relationships increased. So dating, wars. Oh my goodness! Look at World War I. You can look at the escalation, the entrapment with war plans and protecting allies. They use the analogy of a frog in a frying pan. If you get a frying pan hot and throw a frog in, supposedly, who did this one? It jumps out. But if you put it in there and then turn it on and slowly heat it up, it'll just sit in there and cook. I don't know if that's true. Drug abuse. People talk about great gateway drugs all the time. They start with alcohol, they start with weed, and then what's a couple pills? What's a little meth? What's some cocaine, some crack, some heroin? Nobody starts off wanting to be a heroin addict. Is how they kind of look at drug abuse. Eating disorders is the same way. I'll just have one cookie, or like me with chips. I'll just have a couple chips. Well, that was pretty good. I'll go a little more. Oh, maybe I'll go a little bit further. Well, I've already ate half of it. I might as well finish the bag. So that's all I got for today. It's a pretty long section. If you have any questions, let me know. Make sure you check out that Stanford Prison video.